The Super Nintendo is one of my favorite consoles of all time. My brothers and I received it as a Christmas present back in 1991, and to this day it's still my favorite Christmas present of all time. It supported excellent first-party titles, an awesome catalog of RPGs, and also featured great support from second and third-party developers. We had a Sega Genesis as well, but I still felt that the Super Nintendo had better sound effects, music, and had a brighter color palette. And in general, I was more interested in Nintendo titles anyway. Now, nothing against the Genesis, it couldn't be beat for unique titles and mature content for its time, and the fact that sports games excelled on this system greater than the Super Nintendo. So here are my personal picks for the top 10 Super Nintendo games of all time. But first, here are some honorable mentions. Kirby Superstar, Tetris and Dr. Mario, Mortal Kombat 2, Donkey Kong Country, Tetris Attack, Yoshi's Island is the official sequel to Super Mario World, which starred Yoshi. So this was called Super Mario World 2, and Super Mario World was originally called Super Mario Bros. 4. So does that make Yoshi's Island Super Mario Bros. 5? Anyway, Yoshi's Island is a fun and cute platformer with a great aesthetic without looking or being overly kiddish. I always felt that future games in the Yoshi series did tend to look and sound more kiddish than anything. Especially this game's direct sequel on the Nintendo 64, Yoshi's Story. Just like Super Mario World, Yoshi can defeat most enemies by jumping on them or by swallowing them. Unlike that game, Yoshi now has the ability to turn enemies into eggs that can be shot, using automatically moving crosshairs at various targets and other enemies. The difficulty of using this system of aiming ramps up when trying to position the moving crosshairs at a target that's moving, and this difficulty increases further if Yoshi is also moving and/or airborne. One complaint among many people who have played this game is the annoying crying that Baby Mario does when separated from Yoshi if Yoshi gets hit by an enemy. If Mario is separated like this when the star counter reaches 0, Bowser's forces abduct Baby Mario and Yoshi loses a life. Baby Mario's cries are annoying, but just like the drowning music from Sonic the Hedgehog, this adds an additional level of urgency to rescuing Mario. My rating systems that I made didn't have me feature the first or second Zelda games on my top 10 NES list, which surprised me almost as much as this same list didn't have any Final Fantasy games on it as well. Unlike that list, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past definitely lands in my top 10 SNES game list. Link to the Past perfected the top-down 2D Zelda formula. It took all gameplay, graphical, and audio aspects from the first Zelda game and improved upon them, though Link to the Past is more linear than the original NES Zelda. A lot of gameplay aspects from this game were replicated in future portable Zelda games, such as Link's Awakening, Minish Cap, and the like. However, none of these games were able to quite capture what made Link to the Past so special. Link is only allowed to have one of his tools assigned to a single button at a time via the start menu. I do wish they could have been assigned to multiple buttons like the remake of Link's Awakening on the Nintendo Switch or Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 64. This is just one very small negative to such a fantastic game. As a teenager, I was proud of my Zero Deaths run while also being able to get all the items in heart containers. A couple of years ago, I did a poverty run, beating this with the least amount of upgrades, suits, hearts, along with getting no deaths as well. As an FYI to this run, the only way to hurt the last boss, Ganon, without the upgraded Master Sword is a charged up spin attack. This led to a very, very long final battle. When the first Donkey Kong Country came out in 1994, I played the heck out of it. I tried the sequel at my buddy Tony's house when it first came out. When I had come home later that day, my brother asked me if I liked it, and I said that I hated it. I got a chance to replay this game a year later, and I slowly but surely fell in love with it. I realized later that I first hated this game due to being way too familiar with the original game, especially with some of the changes and improvements that this sequel made. Just like in the original Donkey Kong Country, You control one of two characters at a time, switching between them when you have both available by hitting the select button. Unlike the original, both characters are really quick, and you can use the A button to team both characters, if they are available, as an additional attack, or to reach a lot of normally unreachable areas or items. This second game in the series continues to feature the great graphics for its time that the original one did, but also includes new environments and many different pirate-themed areas. David Wise really outdid himself with this game's soundtrack, which in my opinion is the best in the entire Donkey Kong Country series, including Tropical Freeze's fantastic score. Three words. You spoony bard. These words exemplify some of the negatives of the game, which are designated really to the version that I'm the most familiar with, the original one released in the United States. This version had a poor translation with additional censorship elements, such as changing spell names of Holy to White, Death to Fatal. Additionally, this version that we got was the easy type version of this game. The original Japanese one was much harder, but it also had additional abilities from many of the characters that were removed, such as Cecil's Darkness ability that attacked all enemies at once, but also took 10% of his HP away. Because the original Japanese version of this game is the superior one, this is the one that ultimately is on the top 10 list here. This Final Fantasy went back to the story-driven narrative like Final Fantasy II did, while also retaining the standard experience and level structure, with characters that entered and exited the party throughout the story that themselves also specialize in non-changeable jobs like monk, bard, and so on. This game is really a story of redemption for the main character Cecil. He is the leader of an elite airship team called the Red Wings, though the game starts off with him basically as a hatchet man for the King of Baron. Vowing to ultimately defy his king's wishes, it sees him and his friends travel to various locations in the world, including the underworld, as well as traveling in space. This was the first Final Fantasy game to introduce the ATB battle system that would continue through the 9th entry. This also continues the tradition of a fantastic musical score by Nobuo Uematsu. Mega Man X has fantastic graphics with a more mature look than Mega Man had on the NES. It also sports fast and tight gameplay, along with an absolutely fantastic soundtrack, which is barely beaten out by Mega Man 2's soundtrack. This game promised to usher in a new era for Mega Man in general on the Super Nintendo. What happened was the sequel to this, X2, was decent, albeit it kept the formula for Mega Man sequels on the NES by barely changing up a lot. I felt that X3 was a step down due to it feeling kind of bland overall. And I personally liked Mega Man 7, although many people felt it was weak compared to its earlier entries. So overall, I'm not really sure that promise of great Mega Man games on the Super Nintendo after X was truly kept. Regardless, X broke a lot of the NES Mega Man formulas by making health bar expansions available for pickup, along with energy reserve tanks and equipment upgrades. It also gave Mega Man the innate ability to climb walls, which the NES version never had. I literally can't think of a single fault with Mega Man X. I personally have a lot of fun memories of the game, such as playing the PC version of the game on my brother's computer, as well as renting it out from Video Vault as a kid. Not really sure why we never owned the cartridge on the Super Nintendo. As I may have mentioned before, Final Fantasy is my favorite video game series, with the Super Mario one probably being a close second. The companies for both games, Squaresoft and Nintendo, came together to create Mario's first ever foray into the RPG genre with this game. The story starts out with standard Mario fare, with Mario going to rescue the princess from Bowser. As a cool nod to the original Super Mario series, when Mario faces Bowser in battle in Mario RPG, the same music plays as when Mario faces Bowser in battle in Super Mario Bros. 3. Immediately after Mario saves the princess, however, a giant sword pierces the sky, slamming into Bowser's castle and causing the three classic Mario characters to scatter across Mario's world. Gameplay outside battles feature an isometric style view of the world. The game worlds themselves are colored and varied, and the characters and story are fun and surprisingly engaging. It keeps RPG mechanics such as experience points and levels, party members, and magic, while also adding in Mario-type elements, such as equipment that party members wear, like Mario being able to equip hammers and Koopa shells, and Bowser being able to equip chain chomps. This game also added in a new timed hit element to add more action to the game. For example, if you're attacking and you hit the A button at the right time, your character will do more damage. Similarly, if your character is being attacked with a physical attack, if you hit the A button, you'll be able to either do half damage or block the attack completely. This is an element that continued in future Mario RPG games, such as the Paper Mario and Mario & Luigi RPG series. Unfortunately, this is the only RPG game that Nintendo and Square would collaborate on. Super Mario RPG is also full of fun Nintendo and Squaresoft Easter eggs. For example, Link and Samus are both in the game, and Captain Falcon and Fox McCloud's ships are as well. A super boss named Culex is based on various Final Fantasy series villains, with the battle itself featuring Final Fantasy IV's boss and victory themes. The last 4 games are all in a tie for number 1 for many reasons. They're masterpieces in their own rights, they are some of my favorite games of all time, and they are my favorite games in their respective series as well. Super Mario World is not only my favorite Mario series game of all time, but it also is one of the best Super Nintendo games ever made. It takes the same gameplay elements from Super Mario Bros. 3 and greatly expands on them. It features colorful worlds, environments, and levels. Many of these levels have multiple exits that unlock different paths in the overworld, and you can't beat some of the catchy tunes that easily can get stuck in your head while you play. Super Mario World also introduces Yoshi, which is something Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto had wanted to implement since the original NES Super Mario Bros. And this game also has my favorite Mario power-up of all time, the Feathers Super Cape. One of my favorite personal memories was watching my brothers play this game on Christmas Day when we got it, then having my parents witness me be the first person in our family to actually beat it the morning after. I of course took the Donut Plains Star Road shortcut straight to Bowser to do so. Chrono Trigger is one of the best video games ever made. It is a crowning achievement not only in the art of video games, but also in the development itself. The team of developers called themselves the Dream Team, and such a nickname really is apt here. It was developed by a collaboration between Squaresoft and Enix, 8 years before they merged to become what we know as the company Square Enix today. This included Dragon Quest series creator Yuji Horii, Dragon Quest graphic artist and Dragon Ball Z creator Akira Toriyama, Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu, and Final Fantasy creators Hironobu Sakaguchi and Kazuhiko Aoki. This combining of video game creators' superpowers were never heard of at the time, much like how the Nintendo Squaresoft combination for Super Mario RPG was also unheard of. Now, I first started playing Dragon Quest games within the last year, and upon looking back at Chrono Trigger, I do see a lot of the influence from the Dragon Quest series that I never realized was from those games. The story features silent protagonist Chrono getting ready to celebrate the Millennial Fair for the world's year hitting 1000 AD. Chrono plans to visit his friend Luca's exhibit at the fair when he meets a young girl whose fate becomes deeply intertwined with his once they arrive at Luca's stall. The story's plot is interwoven through time travel as they visit prehistoric times, a desolate post-apocalyptic future, chivalrous Middle Ages, and the like. This is the first video game I've played that has a character with the same first name as me, without any RPG-style renames, of course. Chrono Trigger sports absolutely fantastic graphics, music, gameplay, and battle system, as featured by the Final Fantasy series Active Time Battle. Now, the game itself is surprisingly short for an RPG. It can last as short as 10 hours for me on a normal run, even not by a New Game Plus. However, the game is not diminished by this. If you beat the game at certain points during the story, you can get different endings. Admittedly, some of them aren't as interesting as others can be. One of my personal memories is that I can never forget playing and replaying the game until all the characters were maxed on their various levels and stats. This was the last RPG game my brother beat before me, and listening to this game's soundtrack to this day always hits me with a wave of nostalgia. This is one of my all-time favorite games, my favorite game in the Metroid series, and this is one of the best Super Nintendo games ever released. Super Metroid simply is gaming perfection. It has fantastic gameplay, colorful and varied environments, an absolutely fantastic musical soundtrack, and great visuals for its time. The small amount of story given to the player is actually not a detriment. Rather, it purposely accentuates the player's feeling of isolation on an uncaring and hostile planet. This allows the player to become immersed deeper in the various environments of planet Zebes. This game also has a very large legacy. Many elements such as enemies, music, and new power-ups in this game also make appearances in future Metroid games. In a larger sense, Super Metroid, as well as Castlevania Symphony of the Night, helped to create the Metroidvania subgenre, to which indie games like Axiom Verge and Hollow Knight, both excellent games as well, were modeled from. Metroid games in general encourage players to complete it as quickly as possible. This is because the player is rewarded with a better ending the quicker they complete the game. It is this, along with a myriad of techniques that Sam starts off with and gets in the game, that help to develop and encourage a large speedrunning community for Super Metroid. To this day, the speedrunning community still competes for the fastest completion times, often in many categories, such as 100% completion or fastest time with the lowest amount of ammo upgrades, energy, and equipment possible. This is the best Super Nintendo game, and it is also my favorite Final Fantasy game and my favorite video game of all time. This game also includes my favorite video game character, Locke, the Treasure Hunter. While the story features a large cast of characters, this is the first Final Fantasy game to feature dual female leads, one for the first half of the game and another for the second half. The story starts out with a mysterious young woman named Terra who has the ability to perform magic spells. Magic was a force not seen on this world in nearly 1,000 years. Seeking greater power, this young woman is placed under control by the Empire via a slave crown, an object that robs all of her thoughts from her. Under the Empire's control, she journeys to a town in the north with two of the Empire's soldiers to investigate a frozen magical being called an Esper. The story as it progresses hits some very mature beats. These include topics such as suicide, teen pregnancy, and even genocide. The game continues the ATB battle system from Final Fantasy IV and V, with the magic ability unlocked and learned for nearly all the characters by equipping Espers. The characters themselves are quite engaging and contain a wide range of in-battle abilities. This, just like Final Fantasy IV, was composed by Nobuo Uematsu. Friends and fans alike refer to him as Nobu-san. And Nobu-san has said that Final Fantasy VI's soundtrack is by far his favorite. I've attended a number of Distant World Final Fantasy concerts where I was able to watch and listen Nobu-san's music being played by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. A couple times Nobu-san would also perform a couple songs himself, so it was a real honor to see him perform live. Topping all of that, I was also able to meet him once in person. It was one of the greatest honors that I could have ever had as both a video game and Final Fantasy fan. Graphics were upgraded significantly from Final Fantasy V, including piloting both chocobos and the airship in Mode 7, as well as character sprites never looking more expressive. I do hope that Square Enix considers doing a remake of Final Fantasy VI, much like how they remade Final Fantasy VII. I can't emphasize how much I love this game and how much of an impact that it had on me as a gamer. So what are your favorite video games for the Super Nintendo? Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thanks for listening and hope you have a great day.